Good morning, guys. Happy Monday. Today we are going to start our first unit officially in reading. We've been talking about what good readers do and how they think about what they're reading. So now it's time to actually dive into our text. So you should have your Unit 1 Government in Action, textbook, your little paper book that we brought you that we had last week on Friday. And we are going to turn to page 6. And page 6 is the story, The First Town Meeting. Today, as we read, we are going to look at how you can refer to key details to explain what you've read, and then use those details to summarize your story. So you'll see here I've underlined key details, and I've underlined the word summarize. So key details are things that we read in a story that are important. They affect the outcome, they affect the plot and what happens next. And if we were to change those details, it would change the entire story. So it might not necessarily be the little things as you're reading, but they're the things that are very important. When we use those key details to summarize, a summary is a short retell. So if someone says, tell me about your day, you're not going to go through step by step, minute by minute, hour by hour, and tell them every single thing you do. You're going to tell them the things in your day that were important to you that affected how your day went. So key details and summarizing. Here is the story that we're going to read today, The First Town Meeting. Before you start reading a text or going back to some of those skills that good readers do, I want you to think about the story and what you know about it from what you see as you just skim the text. Don't read every single thing, but kind of do like in first grade we did picture walks. We're doing something like a picture walk and a word walk. So I'm looking at the title, The First Town Meeting. So far from this title, I'm not sure if this is a true recording of a meeting that took place in a town, like factual events where that would be a nonfiction text, or if it's a fiction text. So I'm going to keep reading just a little bit because it's important as we read that we know if the story is real or if the story is fake, it's fiction. Because if it's fiction, we need to know that everything we're reading may not be actual events or real things. I told my kids last week, if I'm reading a story about unicorns and I don't understand that's a fictional story, I'm going to go out looking for unicorns and never find them. So as I skim my text, I look and I'm just looking at some of the words I'm seeing. It looks right now, it's like a narrative. It's like a story. I don't see dates. I don't see numbers to represent data, like things that actually happened, years, numbers, percentages, those kinds of things we see in a nonfiction text. When I flip the page, I continue to see some dialogue where people are saying things and talking. I see a picture at the bottom that's like a drawing or a painting. It's not an actual photo. And as I flip the page again, I again see the same thing. Another picture that represents what looks like some fictional characters and just still a lot of narrative, a lot of talking. So for here, it's pretty safe to say that I think this story is probably going to be a fiction text. I'm just going to put myself a little F here. So I know as I'm reading that I don't need to think about this story as something that really happened. It may be realistic fiction or it may be fantasy. We don't know yet. As we're reading, guys, we're looking for details that are important, that help us to understand what the story is about, that affects the plot and the way that things happen. I have my highlighter ready to highlight those important details and my pen ready to make some notes if I need to so I can jot down my brain thoughts. You'll notice in this story, the first part of the story, it's kind of like an introduction, it's in italics. So do you see how the words are a little bit cursive looking compared to the first few words? That's regular print. Everything else here is italics. That usually lets you know that it's something that's important or something different from the rest of the text. So I'm going to read that. And I also want to read this under my title. It's an excerpt from The People of Sparks. An excerpt is just a piece. It's like a short part of, like one piece of a story. It's not the entire thing. Okay? And The People of Sparks is either probably a book or an article. So they're taking just one little section out of this whole book to share with us. The People of Sparks is the second title in the books of Ember science fiction series. Right there, I've just been told I'm right. It's a science fiction series. And I know it's a book. The book is set in a not so distant future in which war has devastated Earth. So this lets me know the setting of my story. It's in the future, and the war has devastated Earth. Devastated to me sounds like, and my students and I talked about this Friday, connotations or feelings. Devastated has a very negative feeling to me. Doesn't sound like something good. It tells the story of a group of people who have emerged tired and hungry from an underground city. They left their city because they can no longer produce electricity there. They find the settlement of Sparks, where they are welcomed and fed. But the town's resources are limited. So they are welcomed there and they're fed. That's kind of a happy thing, right? Because remember, they were tired and they were hungry. This is kind of a sad thing. But here's a problem. The town's resources are limited. In order to understand why that might be a problem, we have to understand what resources are and what limited means. So resources are things we need, like food and water, maybe the electricity. Limited means there's just a little bit of it. How long will the townspeople let the newcomers stay? In this excerpt from part 1 of the book, a town meeting is held to decide their fate. So we already have an idea of what we're going to read about. Okay? We have a war that's devastated the earth. People are tired, they're hungry, they don't have any resources, but they find this little settlement where people do have some resources, and the people of that town have welcomed them in and said, "Come, let us help you." But the problem is, if they only have a few resources, they don't know how long they're going to be able to help those people before they start having some problems. So let's see what's happening as we read. Oh, and let me back up. Since our objective today is to understand key details, we need to understand these things we've underlined are key. If we didn't know the war had devastated the earth, we wouldn't understand the seriousness of the situation. It's important to know the people from the underground city are tired and hungry. They cannot produce electricity. Think about electricity, y'all. That's how we have water in our homes, unless you have a well. We have lights, air condition, and these are all things that everybody in the world doesn't have. So electricity is important to us being comfortable in our life. So let's go on. Let's read and see what happens. While Luna slept, 3 town leaders were holding a meeting. They sat at a table in the tower room of the town hall, which looked out over the plaza. Mary's hands were clasped tightly in front of her. Ben scowled, his gray eyebrows bunched together, deepening the 2 lines between them. Wilmer pulled nervously on one ear and looked from Mary to Ben and back to Mary. So here we have the setting, and these people are sitting together at the meeting. What do I know about the details that are explained here in their body language? Okay, Mary's hands were clasped tightly together. Ben scowled. Wilmer's pulling at his ear. What kind of feelings are they having? Are they happy? Are they mad? Are they worried? Yeah, I would say right now, I'm thinking from what I know about how people and their body languages, they're pretty worried. And I'm just going to make that little note to the side. They're worried. And we know they're also town leaders, so they're people that are in charge of making decisions. They can't stay here, said Mary. There are too many of them. Where would we put them? How would we feed them? I'm going to make a little note over here. Mary says, "No way, Jose." "Yes," said Wilmer, "but where can they go?" Wilmer sounds concerned, right? So it's not that he doesn't agree with Mary. And we're going to say he's a little bit on the fence. He agrees with Mary, but he doesn't want to just kick them out to die, right? No one spoke. They had no answer for that question. Outside the settlement of Sparks, The empty lands stretched for miles in all directions. The empty lands. This phrase, empty lands, really takes me back to visualizing from last week when we visualized. I'm able to visualize how devastated the earth is from the war. Okay, I can visualize the earth being empty from war. It helps to create that picture in my mind. Okay, next page. They could go up to Pine Gap, said Wilmer, maybe. Mary snorted and shook her head. How's Mary still feeling? I think Mary's still saying, no. Don't be ridiculous, she said. That's at least 2 weeks' walk away. How could these feeble people travel that far? I have feeble, I'm going to circle that. Feeble people. Feeble is an adjective describing the people. Well, I wonder what feeble means. We know they're coming from an underground city with no electricity and power, and they're tired and they're hungry. I think feeble must mean they're too weak to travel by foot for 2 weeks. How could they carry enough food with them? Where would they get enough food unless we emptied our storehouse and gave them everything? Wilmer nodded, knowing she was right. The people of Sparks knew of only 3 other settlements. Oh my goodness, guys. There's only 3 other little towns, little settlements, they're not even towns, where people are okay after this war. And they'd heard from the roamers that all those places were smaller and poorer than Sparks. Their inhabitants wouldn't want extra mouths to feed either. This is important. Because that means they're not going to get help along their way. The 3 of them gazed out the window and down the moonlit plaza, filled with strange sleeping people from a city under the earth. 400 of them. With no food, no possessions, and nowhere to go. Whoa. So let's stop here and let's just talk real quick about some of the key details we've read. What have we read that's really important to our understanding? We know that the war has devastated the earth. We have people who are really in a bad place. They're tired, they're hungry with no resources, and they've found a town that might be able to help them. But that's going to be tough as well because they have limited resources. So far in the story, if I wanted to summarize what I've read, I would say that the story is mostly about people looking for help after I'm going to use the word straight from the text, devastating. I spelled devastating right. No, this is an A, my friends. Devastating war. Who find a settlement with limited resources to help them. But of course, we don't know yet if they're going to, right? Because we haven't finished the story. So here's where we are. And in this text too, we've already located the problem. So this is the problem. I'm going to put a P out here. And as we read, we will be looking for a solution. How will they solve their solution as we read forward this week in the story? So as we read, we look for key details that support how a story is going to continue and the plot of the story. And then we're able to use those details that we highlighted to write a short summary, a 1-sentence short summary. See you guys in class, ready to keep on learning. Happy Monday, y'all.